All right, welcome in everybody to today's deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at Guardian Brew Coffee by Gold Rush Fever.
Okay.
And, we've got some interesting source material for this one. We've got a couple of podcast episodes.
Right.
We've got some articles and even some FAQs about this coffee. And, just from reading through it, there seems to be kind of a story here that's a little bit deeper than just your average cup of joe.
For sure.
And one of the most interesting things that stuck out to me is this founder.
Yeah.
Went from, working in food and beverage at a corrections facility to launching a specialty coffee brand.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's not a typical path to the specialty coffee world.
No, not at all.
But it does seem like he had a unique perspective because of that and a unique understanding of who he was trying to reach with this.
Exactly. And you can really feel that when you read through this material. The way he talks about his inspiration for creating Guardian Brew is that he saw these corrections officers, struggling through their shifts on just whatever basic coffee was available.
Right.
And it made him want to create something, truly exceptional for them.
It's like he saw a need.
Yeah.
And wanted to fill it, but not just with any coffee, but with something special.
Exactly. And it wasn't even just about the quality of the coffee.
Right.
It was more about creating something that felt like a tribute.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Almost like a symbol of gratitude for these individuals, who are really putting their lives on the line every day and, often don't get the recognition they deserve.
Exactly. It's about recognizing, the humanity behind the uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciating the sacrifices they make. We throw around the term hero a lot.
Right.
But do we really, put our money where our mouth is, so to speak?
Yeah, and it's interesting that he didn't, just assume that he knew what they wanted. He actually actively sought out feedback from corrections officers and first responders.
Interesting.
Making sure that the blend met their specific needs and preferences.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just presuming what people would like.
Right.
You go straight to the source.
Exactly. And there's this great anecdote about a rookie officer being welcomed to the grind with a cup of Guardian Brew.
I love that.
And it illustrates the power of these small gestures, especially in that kind of environment where, things can be pretty intense.
Absolutely. It's like a simple act of kindness.
Yeah.
But it speaks volumes. It's like, we see you, we appreciate you.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think it's interesting how they've chosen to position this coffee. It's not just about, a caffeine fix.
Right.
It's almost like this symbolic gesture of support. And they're really leaning into that in their messaging.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like that tagline, a thank you in a mug.
Yeah.
That's clever.
It is.
It's like it really captures the heart of the brand. It's not just about the coffee. It's about conveying gratitude.
Yeah. And then they have fueling those who protect. A lifeline for the folks who don't get enough thank yous.
Right.
And it's clear that there's a real desire here to go beyond just selling coffee and to actually support these communities.
Yeah, it seems like they're putting their money where their mouth is and not just, using it as a marketing ploy.
Exactly. And they're actually putting that into action in some pretty interesting ways.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, we've got some info here about how a portion of every bag sold actually goes towards supporting organizations that are providing resources and mental health support for first responders and corrections staff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like they're building this network of support around this coffee.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it is. And it kind of makes you think, how often do we as consumers stop and consider the people behind the products that we're consuming? Do we ever think about their stories, their motivations, the impact that they're trying to make?
It's a good point.
Yeah.
We often just see the end product.
Yeah.
But there's always a human story behind it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like in this case, that story can be really powerful.
It is.
And inspiring.
And it definitely makes you think differently about that next cup of coffee that you brew.
Absolutely it does.
Yeah. And And it makes you wonder what other everyday products could be reimagined to support and celebrate those who often go unnoticed.
That's a great question.
Yeah, so we've got this amazing origin story. We've got, a really thoughtful approach to product development.
Right.
And we've got this deeply meaningful mission. But there's another layer here, something that really struck me when I was going through all this material.
Okay, what's that?
And that is the emphasis on mental health support.
Oh, interesting.
It seems like something that the founder is particularly passionate about, and it really ties back to his own experiences working in that environment.
Yeah, I can see that.
He saw firsthand the toll that this job takes on these individuals, the stress, the trauma.
For sure.
And he's using Guardian Brew as a platform to raise awareness and to provide much-needed resources.
That's incredible. It's not something you see every day.
No.
A company taking mental health so seriously.
Especially within these professions where it's often very stigmatized.
Exactly. It's like they're saying it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And we're here to help you.
Exactly. And it's not just about providing resources.
Right.
He also talks about wanting to create a sense of community around Guardian Brew.
Oh, wow.
Connecting those who serve with those they serve.
I like that.
It's almost like breaking down barriers and fostering understanding through this shared love of coffee.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's a fascinating example of how a simple product can become this catalyst for positive change.
Yeah, it really is.
And it makes you think, do you know what other seemingly ordinary things could be used to build bridges and strengthen communities?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is, and it's something that we'll definitely be exploring further in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it.
So join us next time as we delve deeper into Guardian Brew and the impact it's having on the world around us.
See you then.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive into Guardian Brew. Last time we really got into the origins of this blend and, the mission behind it.
Right.
But this time I want to kind of actually get into what are we drinking?
Yeah.
When we have a cup of Guardian Brew.
So looking through the sources, it seems like consistently it's described as a medium dark roast.
Okay.
And they talk a lot about wanting to make sure it's a smooth, bold, but a balanced flavor profile.
Gotcha.
And so there's a lot of mention of dark chocolate toasted nuts and a hint of caramel sweetness.
Yeah, and I even saw a couple of places where they mentioned vanilla and toasted walnut. Yeah, so it seems like they're going for a pretty complex and well-rounded flavor.
Yeah, and it's interesting because thinking back to the founder,
right.
Coming from this food service background in a correctional facility,
this
wasn't just some coffee connoisseur trying to create the next trendy blend or whatever.
Yeah.
This was someone who, understood the practical needs of people working long demanding shifts.
Yeah, and he wasn't just guessing at that. He was actually collaborating with corrections officers and first responders.
That's right.
Throughout that whole development process.
Yeah, they weren't just taste testers. They were actually helping to shape the product.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really collaborative. And there's this one quote from one of the articles that I think really sums it up. One of the corrections officers said, "We needed something that would get us through intake on a full moon."
Oh, wow.
And it just, you can really picture that intensity.
You can feel it.
And that pressure.
Absolutely.
And so, it wasn't just about, a pleasant flavor. It was really about functionality as well.
Yeah, they needed something to get them through.
Yeah, they needed energy. They needed focus.
Right.
But they didn't want, the jitters or the crash.
Yeah.
And so, and that's where all this emphasis on the steady caffeine release comes in.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, the sources don't really get into the specifics of the roasting techniques and stuff.
Right.
But it's clear that that was a priority for them.
Yeah.
To achieve that effect. So, we can kind of speculate that it probably involves a slow controlled roast, maybe using a blend of beans with different caffeine levels.
Right.
To create that kind of gradual release.
Yeah. It's their own little secret recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
But it also shows how much thought and intention went into this. It wasn't just, throwing some beans together.
Right.
It was really about meeting this specific need of this target audience.
Yeah. I mean, and you can even see that in the taglines and stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like a thank you in a mug or fueling those who protect. It's not just about the coffee itself. It's about the feeling behind it.
Yeah, it's like drinking a cup of appreciation.
Yeah, I like that.
A tangible way to show support for folks who often go unnoticed.
Right.
And that kind of brings us back to, the impact that this is actually having on communities.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they're not just selling coffee, right?
No, they're not.
They're doing a lot of other initiatives as well.
Yeah, so we talked about, the donations.
Uh-huh.
A portion of every bag sold goes towards those supporting organizations.
Yeah.
But then they're also doing like coffee with a cup events.
Oh, wow.
And fundraising initiatives for local departments.
That's great.
So it's really like this multifaceted approach to making a difference.
Yeah, it's going beyond just like the product itself,
Right.
really trying to make an impact.
And the coffee with the cup events, I think, are really interesting because they're using coffee as this like catalyst for dialogue and community breaking down these barriers between law enforcement and the communities that they serve.
It's like a way to connect on a more human level.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more informal, approachable.
Right.
And it just taps into that like universal love of coffee, you know?
Everybody loves coffee.
Yeah, pretty much. And then we can't forget about that mental health aspect as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was a big part of it.
Yeah. The founder repeatedly emphasizes that commitment to providing resources, for folks who are struggling with the emotional toll of these jobs.
And I think that's so important, especially in those professions.
Right.
Where it's, kind of stigmatized.
Yeah. To admit weakness or to admit that you need help.
Exactly. And, these folks are dealing with incredibly stressful and often traumatic situations on a daily basis.
Right.
And yet, they're expected to just keep going.
Right.
Be strong and stoic.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that, Guardian Brew is challenging that expectation by acknowledging that need for support.
Right. And that brings up another important question, I think.
Yeah.
Are we as a society doing enough to support these individuals?
It's a good question.
Yeah. Beyond just, enjoying a cup of coffee.
Right.
What more can we do to show our appreciation and to make a tangible difference in their lives?
That's a really good question. And I think it's something that, as we move into the last part of our deep dive,
right,
it's something we should really think about.
Yeah.
We've talked about, the origins and the blend and the impact.
Right.
But now it's time to kind of zoom out a little bit and think about, what are the bigger implications of this story?
Right. What does this tell us about how we as a society value and support those who serve and protect us?
And what are the lessons that we can learn from this?
Yeah.
From this unique and inspiring initiative?
That's what we'll be talking about next time. So.
All right. So join us for part 3 as we kind of tackle those questions head on. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dives into Guardian Brew. We've really explored this story behind the coffee, the founder's journey, the impact it's having.
Right.
But I think now what we need to do is kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture here.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. What are the societal implications?
Yeah, exactly.
Of all this.
We've been talking about this coffee, but I think it brings up some bigger questions.
It does. And what really struck me is how we view those who serve and protect our communities.
Right.
We tend to applaud them in these moments of crisis.
Right. We see them as heroes.
Exactly. But do we really think about
Yeah.
the day-to-day toll that this work takes on their, mental and emotional well-being. Right. And that's something that, really came through in the source material. The founder talks about witnessing these quiet moments of reflection.
Oh, yeah.
Amongst the corrections officers that he worked with.
Yeah.
And it just you can really picture these people, behind the uniform.
It humanizes them.
It does. And, we don't often think about that.
No, we don't. And I think, as a society,
yeah,
we have this expectation
right,
that they should be strong. They should be stoic.
Yeah.
Always ready to handle whatever's thrown at them. But we don't often provide the support.
Yeah.
That they need to actually cope with that.
Right.
Emotional and psychological burden.
And there's that other great quote that we talked about before.
Which one?
We're a lifeline for the folks who don't get enough thank yous.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and it just, really highlights that tendency that we have to overlook these professions.
Yeah, we take them for granted.
We do. And that's where, I think what Guardian Brew is doing, with this emphasis on mental health support
Right.
is so important.
It is, and it's not just lip service. They're actually donating a portion of their proceeds to organizations that actually provide these resources.
Exactly.
To first responders and corrections staff.
Yeah, so it's a good first step, but I think we need to do more.
Absolutely. Like, we need to destigmatize these issues, create a culture where it's okay to ask for help, to show vulnerability.
And it's not just about, providing resources. It's also about acknowledging the systemic issues that are contributing to this.
Absolutely. Things like long hours, high pressure situations, exposure to trauma.
Right.
All of that takes a toll.
Yeah. And so, I think the question now is, where do we go from here?
Right. What can we do?
As individuals, what can we do to make a difference?
Well, obviously, buying a bag of Guardian Brew is a great way to support the cause.
Right.
But it's just a starting point.
Yeah.
We can volunteer our time. We can donate to relevant charities. Or even just, make an effort to be more mindful of the sacrifices that these people are making every day.
Yeah.
A simple thank you goes a long way.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. And it's really about shifting our perspective, like remembering that behind every uniform, behind every badge, there's a person.
There's a human being.
Who deserves our respect, our gratitude, our support.
Absolutely. And I think, this whole deep dive has really shown how something as simple as a cup of coffee can be this powerful symbol of appreciation.
Yeah.
A way to connect with and support those who often go unnoticed.
And it makes you think, what other seemingly ordinary things could we reimagine to achieve that same kind of impact?
Absolutely. What other everyday thing could we use to build that understanding and that support?
That's a great question. And it's something that I hope all of our listeners will kind of think about.
Me too.
And, if you want to support this mission, definitely check out their website, goldrushfevercoffee.com.
It's a good cause.
It is. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Guardian Brew. And until next time.
See you then.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those thoughtful conversations flowing.